Leppenheim, capital of the Antares Empire. A monstrous roar echoed through the city as a colossal beast stomped down, shaking the ground. Two enormous creatures clashed amidst flames, surrounded by armored soldiers. A nobleman exclaimed that their 2 million-strong army had been defeated by the summoned monsters. Another official reported to His Majesty that 200,000 were dead and 300,000 wounded due to the enemy's area and summoning spells. Yet, he declared, this would be the end for the demon king who destroyed their kingdom and tainted the world with evil. True heroes would purge him from this world. The soldiers credited the king's unmatched wisdom for their resolve. Within the great demon palace, at the heart of Garak, in the Hall of Abyss, Alex von Hallion, the hero, shouted that the demon king's evil crimes would end today. Alongside Alex stood Tesron, large and muscular, and Ellen, clad in white and gold robes. They faced the throne, declaring it was time for the evil king to return to darkness. On the throne sat Leppenhardt, emperor of the Antares Empire. Cyrus, the stellar sword, raised his glowing blade, vowing to destroy the demon king and end the dark empire. Leppenhardt, annoyed, remarked that he worked hard to build his empire, questioning why they insisted on calling it the Dark Empire when it already had a name, Antares. He pointed out that the sun and moon rose there just like anywhere else. Tesron, with red spiky hair and glowing fists, shouted that the Dark Empire raised demonic creatures. Once Leppenhardt was gone, he claimed those corrupted monsters' evil nature would disappear. Leppenhardt dismissed this, saying the creatures had always been that way. He only taught them human war tactics. He questioned why using battle tactics was called corruption, insisting they were just doing what humans always did. He asked if all 4 warrior kings had fallen. Cyrus replied that the filthy orc didn't stand a chance against his sword. Leppenhardt, shocked, demanded if Tacit, the mighty orc warrior, was truly dead. He remembered orcs as loyal, innocent hunters and gatherers. A goblin once offered him food, and Leppenhardt wondered how people could call them monsters when they protected the weak and stood up to the strong, even if they weren't the cleanest. Tesron boasted that the vile troll had paid for its sins, and even Guru Atilka had returned to the earth. A female troll protested, saying trolls were a tribe that honored nature and polished their souls, not vile creatures. Saint Ellen announced that the evil dwarf who worshipped the god of darkness had also been set on the right path. Leppenhardt, distressed, couldn't believe Make-Lin was dead too. He questioned when the dwarven god Alport became known as the god of darkness, calling it arrogant to treat any deity other than Sayer and the 12 as evil. Light wizard Jade Arclight declared he had sent the wicked dark elf to the afterlife. She was no match for his magic. A voice thundered, accusing them of daring to kill Cirrus. Leppenhardt, enraged and empowered, demanded if they were so eager to die. Alex von Hallion accused Leppenhardt of revealing his true colors, insisting dark elves were fallen creatures engulfed in darkness and unworthy of pity. Leppenhardt protested that Cirrus was not a dark elf. She was simply tan because humans destroyed forests, forcing elves into the wastelands where the sun burned their skin. He questioned how a pure-blooded high elf could be called a dark elf just for being tan. Alex, Ellen, Cyrus, and Jade Arclight stood together, empowered by light. Alex vowed to bring peace to the souls of the dead with his sword. Leppenhardt, with a sinister smile, concluded there was no use talking. He asked who would bring peace to the souls of the other races who had been slain. Alex called Leppenhardt despicable, blaming his evil powers for corrupting the creatures, insisting they could have lived as they were meant to. Leppenhardt thought the conversation was pointless. Tesron's armored hand reached toward Leppenhardt, stating that to the others, non-humans were nothing more than dark creatures who dared to step out of their place as slaves, evil beings to be killed. Leppenhardt, surrounded by power, declared he would become the demon king they wanted him to be. A surge of energy knocked the heroes back. Leppenhardt, with tears in his eyes, introduced himself. Leppenhardt. He used to be an archwizard, not exactly ordinary. He reflected that humans didn't see other races as intellectual equals. Elves were treated as beautiful servants, dwarves as dexterous slaves, orcs as strong workers, and trolls as ingredients for healing potions. All had lost their pride and dignity. He was shocked to discover the hidden injustice in their forgotten culture, but through them, he learned their way of life. By combining elven elemental magic and troll sorcery, he became the first to wield 10-circle magic. His values changed, and unable to bear the treatment of enslaved races, he began rescuing them. As his territory grew, it became harder to hide from humans, who eventually sent knights to invade. They kept attacking and destroying, forcing Leppenhardt and his people to move repeatedly. Although they only defended themselves, their territory expanded, and the Antares Empire was born. He built a nation for other races, not out of hatred for humans, but because he believed all intelligent beings were equal. He never sought revenge, but this was the result. Even when his citizens called the Empire a great place to live, humans claimed it was due to the Demon King's evil magic. He admitted that having orcs and goblins as imperial guards might have seemed intimidating, but that was no excuse for killing innocent citizens and comrades. As ruler, he had a duty to protect his empire. Leppenhardt unleashed his power, vowing to abolish any law that allowed such killings and establish a new one. Alex von Hallion screamed in pain as Tesron stood over him, criticizing Alex for being skilled in both sword and magic, but mastering neither. Alex retorted that versatility only made him a master of none. Leppenhardt, with tears streaming down, thought that in heroic tales, the hero survived to the end, but in reality, specialists succeeded. Tesron, glowing with golden energy, proclaimed himself the only one left, the king of fists, with unmatched strength and endurance. Leppenhardt realized Tesron was different from the others. Taking him down wouldn't be easy. Tesron, a true specialist, had focused on one skill his entire life. Tesron, glowing with golden energy, unleashed a devastating attack. He drove his glowing golden fist forward with immense force, the explosive impact echoing through the ruined hall. Leppenhardt was sent flying backwards, battered by the sheer power of Tesron's punch. Leppenhardt, reeling through the air, realized just how formidable Tesron was. Taking him down was not going to be easy. Leppenhardt, battered, looked up at him with a determined gaze. Tesron leapt into the air, energy swirling around him as he prepared to strike again. Leppenhardt, surrounded by swirling purple energy, extended his hands, readying a spell. Tesron prepared for a massive attack. He punched Leppenhardt in the head with such force the shockwave rippled through the air, leaving Leppenhardt visibly shaken and broken. Struggling to regain his composure, Leppenhardt tried to straighten his head, but the blow had clearly rattled him. As Tesron calmly walked up to him, as tension mounted, Leppenhardt, bruised and bleeding, taunted Tesron, saying he blocked the attack with magic. Tesron acknowledged Leppenhardt's strength as a leader of demonic creatures. Leppenhardt, severely injured, thought his spine was shattered and that he wouldn't last much longer. He knew he needed to defeat Tesron to win, but admitted he didn't stand a chance. Tesron stood over him, ready to send Leppenhardt to a peaceful place. Leppenhardt, still defiant, conceded defeat, but couldn't accept the idea that others would be freed from their evil nature and return to their true selves. He clenched his teeth in determination, refusing to give up. He questioned if Tesron meant that the others were meant to live as slaves. Leppenhardt stood up, enraged, and revealed an ancient artifact, the Eye of Time and Space. Not even a 10-circle magic wizard like him could unravel its magic. Tesron, shocked, demanded to know what Leppenhardt was doing. Leppenhardt announced he would cast a time and space-changing spell, one that rewinds the caster's time and disrupts the natural order of the gods. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he had nothing to lose. He challenged Tesron to try to stop him. Tesron lunged forward as Leppenhardt activated the spell, determined not to die yet. Not like this. A collision of energy and light engulfed the hall. Suddenly, Birds chirped outside a cozy wooden house. Sunlight streamed through white curtains. Leppenhardt wondered what the sound was. He felt warm and comfortable. Was he still alive? He blinked and realized he now appeared younger, with no facial hair and bandages. Looking at his hands and chest, he marveled that the spell had worked, even though he barely decoded it. He admitted he was a genius, but didn't expect the spell to activate so easily. Looking around, he realized he had leaped through time, but didn't recognize the place. He wondered, shocked, how old he was now. Leppenhardt surveyed his new physique, thinking that even the toughest men would break down in tears if they saw the sheer size of that body. He demanded of the silent room who the true owner was, then noticed the heavy calluses, the lattice of scars, and muscles layered upon muscles. A wizard, he reasoned, only needed to cast spells. A sculpted six-pack was useless. He recalled, without false modesty, that in his prime he had been a renowned charmer, his distinguished looks winning many an elven heart. Now, the reflection looking back at him seemed bland, the sharp features gone, replaced by bulging muscle. He wondered whether the time and space spell had failed and left him trapped in a stranger's body. Yet the face felt familiar. Perhaps this was not the past. Perhaps his soul had simply been switched. Thick brown eyebrows, fierce eyes, a stubborn mouth. If the body gained some height and facial hair, it would resemble the king of Fis himself. Realization struck, and he murmured Tesron's name. At that moment, Gerard Chrome, Prody eyes burst in, calling Tesron a lazy punk and scolding that the sun was already high. Gerard urged him to start the day with a smile. Startled, Leppenhardt stammered, calling the intruder a monster. When Gerard noted the bewildered stare, Leppenhardt admitted he truly did not know who Gerard was. Gerard sighed, reminding him that the memory loss excuse had been tried twice already. Brushing aside the protests, Gerard ordered Tesron to the training grounds. Leppenhardt, reasoning that only Tesron's teacher, the continent's strongest fighter, could speak so, realized he stood before Gerard Chrome, Prody eyes himself. He tried to plead, but Gerard silenced him with a flick and declared that training would begin immediately. He was tightly bound to a tree with thick ropes. With his large, weathered hand resting near Leppenhardt's face, Gerard asserted his authority, remarking that Leppenhardt had been talking too much today. Leppenhardt struggled against his restraints, a muffled protest escaping from behind his gag. Refusing to relent, Gerard added more ropes across Leppenhardt's chest, binding him even more securely to the tree. His grip tightened around one of the poles, signaling that the day's training was about to begin. Despite the overwhelming restraints, Leppenhardt continued to wriggle and fight, his muffled sounds echoing his frustration. As Gerard declared the start of training, Leppenhardt's eyes widened with a fierce mixture of determination and defiance. Straining desperately against the ropes and gag, his face reflected both his resistance and resolve. Leppenhardt's muscular frame flexed powerfully, veins bulging as every fiber of his being resisted the restraints. The ropes pulled taut as he summoned all his strength, sweat glistening on his skin under the strain of his effort. Yet the struggle only intensified. Leppenhardt's body trembled under the relentless pressure, muscles rippling as he gave everything he had. He fought on, his breath ragged and face contorted in agony. With each second, the pain mounted. Tears and sweat mingled, and saliva slipped from the corner of his mouth. The anguish was overwhelming, each strike emphasizing the severity of the training. At the edge of consciousness, Leppenhardt's vision blurred, and suddenly he saw a fleeting image of Cirrus, a woman with white hair reaching out to him. Her presence felt both distant and painfully familiar. In that moment of deep vulnerability, Leppenhardt's thoughts turned desperate as he silently called out to her, fearing this ordeal would be his breaking point. "Cirrus, I'm afraid this is the end for me." Gerard noticed the boy's body felt softer than usual and wondered if memory loss was genuine. Jim Unbreakable's brutal regimen had made even Gerard forget things once or twice. The remedy, he decided, was simple. The more Tesron was beaten, the faster the memories would return. Gagged, Leppenhardt pleaded for help while Gerard launched into a lecture. Humans, the master said, wielded weapons only because they were weak, cowards masking fragility with steel. A true fighter had to train and conquer those weaknesses. The human body was like iron, growing stronger each time it was hammered. Leppenhardt protested that such logic was absurd, but Gerard pressed on, affirming that Tesron's body had no limits. Fine iron could indeed become steel. Only exceptional people could forge such a body, and Gerard had found that potential in Tesron. He urged his pupil to think of a vast ocean, one that accepted everything yet remained unchanged, and to unleash that ocean within. Battered and bruised, Leppenhardt struggled to grasp the metaphors, but Gerard finally called an end to the session, granting him rest. Astonished, he realized he had survived. Tears welled up as he thanked the heavens for his resilience. Soaking in a bath infused with gerald grass, peptal's petals, and generous bottles of healing potion, each worth at least 10 silver coins, he marveled at the extravagance. He asked Gerard why such a bath had been prepared, and the master replied that iron had to be cooled after hammering. Leppenhardt reflected that Jim Unbreakable's method, driving the body to its limits, then using aura and healing water to recover, allowed it to regenerate before breaking down, becoming tougher each time. The regimen, he admitted, was not baseless. Having fought Tesron in the future, he knew how resilient the King of Fists' body was. The training must have begun in childhood. With a weary sigh, he accepted that he was indeed in the past. New questions arose. What had happened to the Leppenhardt of this era? Did a younger version of him still live somewhere? Could two versions of the same soul exist at once? Two possibilities took shape. Either he, the future Leppenhardt, now occupied Tesron's body while the young Leppenhardt lived on, or the young Leppenhardt's body now carried the soul of Tesron, the King of Fists. Master Gerard began the day by pointing at a towering heap of roasted drumsticks and ordering Leppenhardt to eat every last morsel. Leppenhardt obeyed, tearing into the meat while the old fighter reminded him that the body needed nutrients after being pushed to its limits. No sooner was the meal finished than Gerard bounded up a snowy cliff, declaring it time for a light jog. Leppenhardt, burdened by an enormous training sack, struggled after him until he collapsed on the path. When Gerard asked if the load was too much, Leppenhardt forced himself upright, vowing that he could continue. Soon both master and student were suspended upside down from chains bolted to a cliff. Gerard hung at ease, but Leppenhardt writhed and cursed the endless regimen, wondering how long the brutality would last. That night he dropped onto his cot and, in a moment of bleak clarity, realized once more that he was inhabiting young Tesron's body. In the gloom of a stone cell, he brooded on the dangers of two identical souls existing in one timeline. If his younger self, still a bookish apprentice at the Delphia Magic Tower, ever crossed paths with him, the clash could annihilate them both. He comforted himself that the meeting was unlikely. Young Leppenhardt would be buried in scrolls for another decade, and Tesron, now possibly trapped in Leppenhardt's aging body, would find that frail frame useless for Jim Unbreakable's training. Nevertheless, the thought of permanent entrapment drove him to plan an escape. Under a crescent moon, he slipped from the dormitory and bolted through the forest, only to find Gerard sitting cross-legged on a boulder, aura humming around him. The master noted, with sly amusement, that this was the 9th escape attempt in 2 months and predicted Leppenhardt would soon reach double digits. Leppenhardt blurted that he was not Tesron at all, but Leppenhardt, a wizard. Gerard answered with a knowing smile. Last time the boy had claimed to come from another world. Before that, he was a reincarnated martial sage from Juan. Admitting that today's fantasy was at least creative, Gerard seized his pupil's arm and dragged him back to bed, promising more training after a good rest. The following morning, and many mornings after, Leppenhardt endured submersion drills, chain drags, and hill sprints. He learned that Jim Unbreakable had perfected apprentice escape prevention methods for 130 years, and that any student who fled would be hunted to the ends of the earth. Eventually, even the so-called demon king of tenacity surrendered the dream of running away. 2 years passed in that loving hell. One day, the chains around Leppenhardt's wrists shattered and a vivid orange aura burst from his body. Gerard roared with pride. The boy had awakened his aura younger than most prodigies. The master explained that life or death training triggered survival instincts, and that heightened vitality crystallized into aura. Proof was that Gerard's own practice bat scarcely hurt anymore. Leppenhardt dared hope the next phase would involve real techniques and perhaps permission to leave the mountain. Gerard agreed. Skill training meant free sparring against the master himself. 3 more grueling years rolled by. At last, Gerard led his disciple to a waterfall deep in the Rakip Range. There, Leppenhardt practiced the secret strike Calamity Horn, condensing layered aura around his fist. He could muster 3 stacks, but needed 4 to earn freedom. Remembering that Tesron of his previous life had managed 7 and Gerard 8, he resolved to push further. While the master visited a village, Leppenhardt ended the physical session and switched to magic. He shaped purple mana into an arrow bullet, but Tesron's body resisted the finer calculations of sorcery. Frustrated, he sensed a non-human presence and stepped into the trees. An orc, tall, scarred and armed, emerged from the shadows. Leppenhardt identified the creature at once. The orc, sweat beading on his brow, warned the human to pretend nothing had been seen. If Leppenhardt complied, he would be spared. Leppenhardt judged the small orc to be no more than 4 years old and wondered if the child had fled a battle arena. Because Leppenhardt showed no hostility, he realized the orc hoped to talk, a mark of the race's pride and reluctance to spill blood needlessly. Addressing the child in the language of grace, he asked whether the youngster was being hunted. The orc, astonished to hear his tongue from a human, demanded how the stranger could speak it. Leppenhardt replied that he had once known orcs. Grateful, the boy admitted pursuers were on his heels. Leppenhardt offered help and asked for trust. Tacit, the orc, said any speaker of grace was a brother and that he sensed true goodwill, but he warned that assisting him would place Leppenhardt in danger. Hearing such eloquence, Leppenhardt suspected noble blood, yet assured the boy that he possessed strength enough for them both. He summoned purple mana and opened a hiding portal inside a cave, explaining that his spell would conceal Tacit. The orc marveled that such a muscular man could be a wizard, prompting Leppenhardt to concede that his appearance made sorcery seem unlikely. Tacit thanked him sincerely. Soon 3 mercenaries appeared, seeking the runaway orc and promising a gold coin for information they never intended to pay. Leppenhardt denied seeing the child, but the men spotted tracks and tried to press past him. Deciding strangers would not trespass on his mountain, he recalled Gerard's lesson. A fighter whose fist could kill with 1 blow must show mercy to the weak. He tore a stone club from the ground, a kinder weapon than bare hands, and warned the mercenaries they would live. Red aura flared as he advanced. The cudgel art Jim Unbreakable taught was meant to temper disciples rather than slay foes, but its all-out assault shattered weapons and scattered men. Swords snapped against Leppenhardt's back, joints cracked, bones bruised, yet no one died. When the last warrior lay groaning, their leader Bright still tried to threaten him. So Leppenhardt struck until the man begged for mercy and ordered his band to flee. Leppenhardt found the fight enjoyable enough to consider taking disciples himself. Tacit, watching, realized his savior already carried Jim Unbreakable's imprint and thanked him again, vowing never to forget. The orc declared that Leppenhardt had become his mentor, a life guide revered like a lord, and promised to draw his sword for him one day. Pressed for a name, Leppenhardt nearly blurted Tez, but caught himself and answered Leppenhardt Walled Antares. Tacit repeated the name, promising to remember it. Asked where he would go, the boy said he preferred wandering death to slavery. Leppenhardt directed him toward the land of trials southeast of the Rocco Range, home to the hidden Blue Bear tribe. They parted ways, but Tacit soon turned back, proclaiming himself Tacit, son of Crota and bearer of Lat's axe. Only then did Leppenhardt realize whom he had rescued. The future chief of the Blue Bears, one of the 4 warrior kings. He doubted the original Tesron would ever have aided such a child and laughed at fate's strange twists. Standing upon a cliff bathed in golden light, he smiled at the distant figure and at the memory of comrades. An orc king, a blue-skinned giant, a white-haired elf queen, a weary human sage, and his own former self on a throne. He wished to meet them all again someday, his comrades, his brothers, and the descendants of fearless warriors. 6 months had passed since that strange encounter with Tacit. The mountains were capped with snow, and the lake below was partially frozen, an unbroken wintry calm. Gerard gave a fierce command to his apprentice, his eyes glowing with yellow light and golden aura swirling around his clenched fist as he warned Leppenhardt to brace himself. Suddenly, a massive, focused blast of golden aura crashed down from above. Leppenhardt, shirtless and with wild red hair, was visibly shocked, but he faced the attack head-on, particles of light swirling around him. With determination, Leppenhardt unleashed his spiral guard. A vortex of fiery red aura spiraled up to meet Gerard's golden blast, and the two clashed violently. Gerard folded his arms, standing proud as the blast faded. He acknowledged that Leppenhardt had truly mastered the spiral guard, noting the shattered earth beneath where Leppenhardt stood. Reflecting back, Gerard remarked that it felt like just yesterday when Leppenhardt first introduced himself with that impossible-sounding name. Gerard had wondered if so many beatings had affected his wits. Leppenhardt, slightly annoyed, reminded him that was 6 years ago and questioned why Gerard was bringing it up now. Gerard mused that it had been almost 10 years since he began teaching, noting his tremendous growth with a satisfied expression as he stroked his beard. However, Gerard suddenly questioned why Leppenhardt was still so short, causing a moment of humor as he towered over his apprentice. Leppenhardt insisted that he was over 180 centimeters tall, prompting Gerard to scoff, claiming that any student of Gym Unbreakable ought to be at least 2 meters in height. He recalled the legendary kings of fists, Walkenschut, Gallifreyn, and Rastow, emphasizing the grand expectations of their school. As he invoked the name Rastow, Gerard's eyes blazed with golden light and his aura surged, reinforcing the power of their lineage. He then demanded to know if Leppenhardt was practicing the breathing techniques he had been taught. Leppenhardt reflected that in his past life, Tesron had been roughly 2.3 meters tall, making Leppenhardt ponder his own constitution in comparison. Leppenhardt tried to reason that his stature was simply a matter of genetics, but Gerard pressed on, warning him of the consequences if he grew even larger by overusing the technique. Leppenhardt quickly protested. He wasn't interested in becoming a giant. Ultimately, Gerard conceded that strength and sturdiness mattered far more than height. With that, he called for Leppenhardt to demonstrate the final result of his training. Leppenhardt's eyes filled with determination as he summoned his golden aura, swirling it around him and shattering the leftover ice from their battle. He focused all his energy into his fist for Calamity Horn, launching a blinding golden strike. The attack surged forwards, a towering pillar of golden light that cracked the earth and shattered the ice beneath his feet. Gerard burst into proud laughter, thrilled by Leppenhardt's power. With satisfaction, Gerard commented that Leppenhardt would no longer be easily beaten. Leppenhardt looked at his hand, triumph shining in his eyes. He had achieved the 4-stack Calamity Horn. Gerard then announced that it was time for Leppenhardt to leave and face the world, his tone both serious and proud. Despite the surprise, Gerard assured him that he had done well. Gerard gently told Leppenhardt to live as his heart desired, whether that meant walking a path of good or evil. What mattered most was that Leppenhardt chose his own life. He explained that the freedom to choose was the true reward for so many years of training. Leppenhardt listened solemnly, absorbing the weight of his master's words. Gerard reflected on advice he had once received himself, 60 years ago, from Rastow, the third king of fists. In a memory, The younger Gerard knelt before Rastal. Rastal advised him to remember 3 things. First, it was acceptable to accumulate wealth, but not to seize it unjustly. Dignity mattered. Even if one chose a villainous path, they had to do so with class. Rastal continued, counseling Gerard to stand on the side of those who had been wronged, not necessarily the weak. He explained that weakness and injustice weren't always the same, especially for those with power. The last lesson was crucial. Never let the legacy of Jim Unbreakable fade away. The teachings must be passed on to a worthy student. Gerard had solemnly promised to remember. Rastal cautioned against obsessively seeking a prodigy, but advised not to hesitate if one appeared. As present-day Gerard tossed a small bag to Leppenhardt, he explained that it contained clothes and 30 silver coins. Leppenhardt was shocked by the paltry sum, questioning Gerard, who was rumored to be among the wealthiest in the kingdom. Gerard explained that the martial sect had always given students a set sum for their departure. He himself had received just 20 coins. He also handed Leppenhardt a map, marking a hidden gift he had left in the Cephleo Mountains, encouraging him to seek it out one day. Wrapped in a cloak, Leppenhardt soon found himself overlooking a vast snowy expanse. He wondered if he was really free at last, finally allowed to step beyond his master's domain. Behind him, a mountain erupted with a dazzling golden column of aura, Gerard's final show of overwhelming power. Terrified, Leppenhardt stared back at the display, only to hear Gerard's farewell. Gerard called out for him to move forward bravely, reminding him that he was now the successor to the greatest teaching in the world. Seeing this, Leppenhardt could only scream as the golden aura crashed towards him, equal parts awe and fear on his face. In the town, an old man bravely confronted a knight and his company of nobles. Despite his apprehension, he addressed Edward, firmly insisting that they pay for the food consumed during their stay. Edward only scoffed at this, his contempt for the townsfolk evident. With a casual gesture, Edward tossed a single gold coin to the old man. For a brief moment, the old man was awestruck, but soon realized it was nowhere near enough. When he voiced his protest, Edward accused him of ignorance and market naivety, growing sharper in his disdain. Without warning, Edward struck the old man hard, leaving bystanders stunned. Even as he was held back by the knights, the old man glared up defiantly, accusing Edward and his men of living like bandits, taking whatever they wanted and leaving only crumbs in return. The old man pointed out the overlooked costs of transportation and labor, but his words fell on deaf ears as the knights restrained him further. Sir Edward tried to downplay the conflict. Lord Stephen came to stand beside Edward, who looked around, his disgust for the townsfolk unmasked. Lord Stephen's expression twisted into a cold, smug smirk as he declared, "This is exactly why you should never show mercy to commoners. They just don't know their place or when to stop." Cirrus Valencia, a female elf with flowing pale hair and pointed ears, lay asleep in a grand, luxurious four-poster bed. The ornate room, adorned with intricate patterns and fine furnishings, radiated elegance and quiet opulence. Gradually, Cirrus stirred awake, her eyes fluttering open as she found herself pondering a question. She wondered aloud why Leppenhardt always touched her body in that affectionate way. Lying beside her was Leppenhardt in his previous, muscular form. Long hair cascading down his shoulders, his hand rested gently on her chest. With a soft smile, he explained that he touched her because he simply enjoyed it. Cirrus looked at him skeptically, her voice gentle yet teasing. She asked what was he liked so much about her skinny little body. The conversation brought a delicate blush to Cirrus's cheeks. Her dark skin, contrasting with her light hair, shimmered as she smiled playfully at him. As the warmth of that memory lingered, Leppenhardt's inner monologue surfaced. He thought to himself that Cirrus appeared so elegant and sharp, like a well-honed blade. Leppenhardt, now inhabiting Tesron's body, stood before a mirror. As he gazed at his reflection, he recalled how his old body once resembled a blade, but now With his massive build, he felt more like a terrifying stone golem. He mourned quietly, apologizing in his thoughts to the girls he once protected. After a moment, Leppenhardt stood tall and imposing, his newfound height and muscular build dwarfing those around him. With Cirrus standing by his side, both looking up in awe, he mused with a faint grin that at least he was much taller now, a small comfort that brought a spark of humor to him. Looking out the window, Leppenhardt's thoughts drifted to Cirrus. He estimated that she would be about 70 by now in elf years, which translated roughly to a 17-year-old in human terms. A wide-angle view revealed a bustling, snow-covered city, Chrome City, nestled in the southern region of the Vasily Kingdom. He recalled the rumor that Cirrus would be sold next year, likely at a slave auction house in the COULDN Kingdom. Leppenhardt pondered his next move. Should he storm the auction house and rescue Cirrus by force? He reasoned that a direct assault might jeopardize his quest to regain his magic. It seemed wiser to simply buy her freedom. However, elf slaves fetched an unimaginable price, and for now, he was flat broke. Standing at the railing and gazing into the distance, Leppenhardt found reassurance in his new strengths. He had acquired a powerful body, mastered many skills, and, crucially, the ability to recall memories of the future. He concentrated, stirring the swirl of artificial phantasmagoria that allowed him to access memories as needed. He remembered ancient ruins located along the road to the COULDN Kingdom, details that might help him amass the gold he needed. Elsewhere, inside a stately building, the knight Stefan von Leppenhardt stood over the meditating wizard Todd, who was surrounded by a shimmering purple aura. Stefan pressed Todd for information about the ruins, but Todd assured him to wait a little longer. Todd, the ruins exploration specialist from Pelphia Magic Tower, declared his certainty once he finished his divination. With the location confirmed, Stefan looked out from a window at the snowy mountain range and the stately structure below, the final resting place of the great swordsman Sir Claude von Leoda's Altion. Leppenhardt's journey northward from Chrome City over the last 3 days carried him into the Hatton mountain range, moving with supernatural endurance and indifference to the cold. As he viewed the map of the Vasily Kingdom, he marveled at his new body's stamina. Even the biting winter air barely touched him. Passing through a snowy forest clad warmly, unlike his legendary predecessors who braved winter shirtless, Leppenhardt continued to rely on artificial phantasmagoria to recall vital memories regarding the ruins. He remembered meeting Wizard Todd during his days at the Delphia Tower when Todd told tales of explorations with a member of House Altion. Leppenhardt, in his previous wizard form, had later traveled to those same ruins, uncovering a secret trove of hidden treasures that Todd's group had overlooked and selling everything for more than 2,000 gold coins. As he approached the snow-shrouded cattle village, he recognized it instantly. Inside, villagers huddled in hushed anxiety, debating grave circumstances. They needed a guide for outsiders demanding passage through the Valley of Death, a place no one returned from. When all fell silent, Ted reluctantly volunteered to guide them, despite the tearful pleas of his child and the mounting pressure from the fearful villagers. Just then, Leppenhardt interrupted, offering to go instead if they would accept. Ted's astonishment was palpable. He demanded to know who would volunteer for such a dangerous task. Leppenhardt explained that he was just a traveler passing through who happened to overhear their troubles and assured the villagers that he was familiar with the area. He had visited the Valley of Death before, though the village chief protested that no man had ever returned from that place. Leppenhardt remained confident, insisting he would save one of their own by stepping in. The Valley of Death was in fact an ancient dungeon, a relic from the forgotten Silver Age. 50 years ago, a famed knight named Claude from House Altion had awakened his aura at the age of 45 and became a hero throughout the Vasily Kingdom. However, fame clouded his judgment, and after charging into the Valley of Death with only a single servant, Claude met his end. The legendary demon Sword Altion, symbol of his house, was lost alongside him, prompting 50 years of failed retrieval attempts. Stefan von Leppenhardt Altion, now leading a determined party, pressed onward to recover what his house had lost. Among his party was Relsha, a poised elf whom Stefan praised as elegant and noble even when dismounted. Relsha, in turn, smiled warmly at the compliment. Leppenhardt watched Stefan's group from afar. He noted the impressive elf, suspecting she was a slayer, and eyed the red-haired priest, Ceylon, initially confusing him for a woman due to his youthful appearance. More importantly, Leppenhardt reflected in surprise that Ceylon was, in fact, male. He wanted an excuse to speak with Todd and felt a sense of nostalgia watching Todd and Ceylon speak together. Todd had once treated Leppenhardt that way when he was a young wizard. Yet now, something about Todd's demeanor fell off, raising his suspicions, but he dismissed them, recalling Todd had always seemed a good man. As the villagers approved of Leppenhardt acting as their guide, he reflected that volunteering was no great feat for him, but it was plain the villagers were terrified. Their fear, he reasoned, was only natural. They were hardly accustomed to the company of the kingdom's bravest knights. But as he looked at the assembled knights, Leppenhardt could only sneer inwardly. He found their arrogance typical, thinking that chivalry bred more narcissists than true protectors. Suddenly, a sharp cry broke the calm. Stefan swiftly moved into the snowy woods as monstrous, rock-like beasts swarmed overhead, attacking with feral speed and intensity. Stefan shouted orders, rallying the knights in the name of Sayer and House Altion, commanding them to repel the monstrous threat. Todd unleashed a fearsome fire chain spell, while Ceylon, glowing with a pink aura, invoked the blessing of Philinage, surrounding his companions with courage and radiant light. Leppenhardt watched the chaotic battle unfold. He acknowledged that Stefan was more skilled than he expected, though from the expertise of a wizard-turned-fighter, the knight's techniques were still sloppy. Reflecting that Master Gerard would take pride in the prowess of Jim Unbreakable, his thoughts shifted as new dangers emerged. Orc-like creatures fled in panic, only to be intercepted by monstrous, avian beasts with red, glowing eyes. Leppenhardt, fists crackling with blue aura, launched into the fray. He lamented that no one else seemed to be concerned for the villagers' safety, taking it upon himself to deal with the threats as his powerful punches sent monsters flying. As the battle raged on, a map illustrated the Vasily kingdom, tracing Leppenhardt's journey from Chrome City through Cattle Village towards the treacherous Hatton Mountain Range. Leppen remembered Todd's grim story. This was where their previous guide had perished. A monstrous, shadow-coated beast lunged forward, its fangs and claws flashing red in the darkness. Stefan of House Altion, leader of the party and clad in shining armor, surged ahead. He brought his sword down with a powerful strike, black stains splattering as he cleaved through the behemoth. But chaos erupted. Winged, bird-like monsters swooped, shrieking and slashing their claws and beaks. Stefan crouched low, fighting furiously as his allies struggled. Panic cries echoed all around. Leppen, watching the fray, mused to himself that Stefan wasn't truly evil, but never protected those beside him. Yet, the result was much the same, neglect that cost lives. As the monsters swarmed, Stefan's skill shined. He leaped, slicing through several enemies midair. One fell, tumbling to the ground. Leppen reasoned that perhaps neglect defined a bad person. No wonder, then, that their guide had died on this journey. Nearby, an unnamed companion barked for someone to hide behind a tree. Danger was everywhere. Among this group, Leppen thought, at least one seemed decent. Suddenly, a massive winged beast launched skyward, light streaking as it vanished from view. Leppen, stoic and defiant despite arrows and projectiles thudding into his torso, scoffed that such attacks barely hurt. Then, an enemy's glowing missile struck and pierced his eye. Pain surged through him, forcing a yell as old. Unshed tears from his training days stung his face. Fists clenched and teeth gritted. An intense blue aura flared around him, signaling a surge of strength and magic. As the dust settled, Stefan demanded a status report. Are the wizard and priest safe? They're safe, my lord, a subordinate replied. Leppen's frustration boiled over. Hey, don't you even care about our safety? Stefan, with his subordinate, turned away, unconcerned. His voice rang out, heralding the Ultion order's strength and urging his knights to enjoy their victory. Jubilant cheers answered him. Seizing the moment, Leppen approached Todd, gratitude in his eyes. You saved my life, thank you. Todd replied quietly, Well, it's what I do. Leppen pressed on, saying, I overheard you're from Delphi Magic Tower. I have a friend there. Todd leaned in. Which friend? His name is Leppenhardt. Do you know him? At that, Leppens uttered his old name with deliberate calm. Todd's response was light, but edged with familiarity. Leppenhardt? I didn't know he had a rugged friend like you. He's really a sweet and lovely boy. A wide, unsettling grin spread on Todd's face, and Leppen grew alarmed. Still, Leppen inquired after Leppenhardt's well-being. Todd shrugged off any concerns. He's studying magic as always. Nothing strange happened. Internally, Todd's thoughts fixated on Leppenhardt's memorable features. A sharp nose, jewel-like eyes, smooth skin, and wondered why his curiosity about the body was so different from Master Gerard's. Panic roiled in Leppen's mind. Should he attack this suspicious stranger, or was he overreacting? Todd, still grinning, claimed indifference. I never cared about his thoughts or actions. Salon, long red hair falling over his shoulders, quietly asked if Leppen was hurt. Leppen shook his head, suggesting Ceylon focus on the Orcish wounded instead. As Ceylon, revealed as the high priest, healed injured orcs in a glow of purple light, the orcs themselves insisted they were unhurt. Ceylon ignored their protest, intent on healing. A nearby knight sniped. Father Ceylon, let them lick their wounds. Why waste magic on those ugly ogres? The words dripped with racial prejudice. Leppen noted how Ceylon's kindness stopped short of true understanding, treating orcs more as pets than as intelligent equals. Orcs, nevertheless, offered heartfelt thanks, while Leppen's thoughts grew heavy. The root problem, he mused, was humanity's fundamental values. Winning rights for non-humans would be a long, painful journey. Abruptly, Stefan called out to the guide to get moving, his tone impatient. Leppen, annoyed, gave detailed directions, leading the party deeper into the forest and dismissing Stefan's questions about his attitude. Time passed beneath the bright forest sun. Worn soldiers voiced their disbelief at the monsters, basilisks, dire wolves, ogres, encountered in such a small mountain range. Leppen, exasperated by their ignorance, bellowed for everyone to get up, his expression wild with anger. Inside, he considered the arrogance of knights, the stubbornness of priests, and the pettiness of wizards, himself most of all. He led them by the quickest and most dangerous path simply because it was expedient, not out of cruelty, or so he insisted to himself. Stefan, contemplative, finally admitted that it was no wonder Sir Claude had died here. The mountain teemed with more monsters than they could have expected. But their discovery made it all worthwhile. The group spotted a glowing structure in the distance. Awe spread among the men as the truth dawned. They had found the ancient ruins of Fulton. With their destination in sight, the party pressed forward to the enormous, glowing, rune-covered entrance. Leppen, still disguised, assured Stefan that the way was clear and safe. Stefan gave orders to prepare, but then dismissed Leppen. When Leppen protested he couldn't return alone, Stefan relented, promising them protection on the way home. Leppen stifled a smug glare. Did they not intend to protect him from the start? Stefan's rallying cry rang out. Beyond these gates, a great night rested. The men cheered, raising their swords high for the demon's sword Ultion. With a thunderous roar, the knights charged through the massive doors. Once alone, Leppen shed his cloak and hurried after. The moment for his true mission had come. Determination flashed across his face. He had his own reasons for coming. He narrated the ancient history of Fulton, a military outpost from the Silver Age, overflowing with technology still unmatched. Though now swarmed by monsters and lost souls, its secrets were incredibly valuable. Memories pulled him back. Long ago, he had explored these ruins alongside Cirrus. He recalled a sylph's voice whispering behind the walls, and Cirrus's elven magic detecting a hidden gate. Cirrus had blushed at a compliment, even offering a quick, playful kiss as a reward. Young Leppenhardt remembered the folly and courage of navigating a danger zone for a fleeting moment of affection. Snapping to the present, Leppen accessed a security code, Libra's pattern, Aqua and Terra reversed. The solution was clear in memory, but harder in this new body with its great strength yet lesser magical power and wit. He found success. Ancient mechanisms whirred to life, and hidden doors opened. Preparing for the deeper journey, Leppen carefully removed his coat, a practical gesture from someone used to living on little. Flexing his hands, he braced to test the limits of Tesron's body. Sudden agonized shouts from below snapped his attention. He realized the secret passage led straight to the third basement floor. If it had just opened, it meant an intrusion was underway. He remembered, too late, that Fulton's magic systems would respond to any such threat. The Altion party had likely triggered deadly defenses and plummeted to the second basement. A wave of anxiety broke over him. The situation had devolved into chaos. Elsewhere, Stefan fought for his life in the depths, sword flashing desperately in the magical gloom. A massive red fist crashed down, followed by a monstrous clawed foot. Stefan's terrified stare fixed on a towering demon, a giant, horned, blade-wielding creature radiating pure menace. Despair overtook him. How could mere humans hope to defeat a demon of this power? The beast loomed above them, the shadows shifting as minions gathered, an omen of monstrous challenges to come. A knight knelt in battered armor, clutching hands with Father Salon, the red-haired priest cloaked in pristine white robes. Around him shimmered an ethereal pink aura, spreading warmth as Ceylon invoked a blessing for healing. Through devotion and determination, Ceylon called forth Philinant's healing light for the weary group. As the aura faded, the knight rose, his injuries miraculously fading. He expressed his gratitude to Father Ceylon, while the other knights, still tinged with a faint pink light, offered silent thanks. Ceylon, however, regarded them with pragmatic resolve, knowing their survival ultimately meant his own. Soon after, Father Ceylon and Wizard Ted, clad in dour purple robes, shared a hushed conversation amid the crumbling remains of a collapsed floor. Ceylon voiced disbelief over the sudden collapse that could have claimed their lives. Ted, still composed, acknowledged the narrow escape his magic had granted them, though he warned it could not guarantee protection from future dangers. The party, a mix of knights and spellcasters, pressed onward through a darkened, ruined corridor, their nerves taut beneath archways choked by skeletal vines. Suddenly, one of the knights staggered, hunched in pain, as an invisible force struck without warning. The true threat soon revealed itself. A massive, horned monster loomed with blazing red eyes, sowing panic as it sent knights sprawling. Terror seized the group. Some knights openly called for retreat, their faces twisted in fear. But Father Ceylon was incensed by their cowardice. Dissatisfied by the lack of resistance, he lifted his hand and began weaving an intense pink aura. Infuriated, he called once more upon Philinants, pleading for a mace of light to smite the evil before them. A colossal, ornate mace, hewn from pure light, materialized above Ceylon, casting a radiant glow as the monster bellowed in defiance. Watching his so-called guardians cower still, Ceylon's thoughts seethed with frustration. He bemoaned their apparent uselessness, convinced he was wasting holy power on muscle-bound cowards. Undeterred, he poured even more holiness into the knights, urging Philinants to bless them with iron resolve. The knights, now overflowing with pink light, writhed and screamed as the energy transformed them into berserkers. Bristling with newfound aggression, the knights, emboldened by Ceylon's blessing, launched themselves at the monster, their size and presence magnified. Wizard Ted watched intently, calculating how much holy power Ceylon had poured in, noting that the warriors seemed almost possessed as they howled and rallied under House Altion's banner, eager to prove their strength. The rabid assault began, weapons clashing against the monster's hide in a storm of sparks and frenzied battle. At this moment, Wizard Ted stepped forward, manipulating a swirling blue aura and channeling a spell to tip the scales. He summoned forth the Earth's power, calling for it to reclaim one of its own, and a colossal stone hand erupted, trapping the monster in its firm grip. Relsha, a determined knight with flowing brown hair, seized the opportunity. Like a wind-sent avenger, she descended with her blade arcing through the air and delivered a fierce strike. Blood splattered across her armor, her eyes blazing with intent as she drove the attack home. But victory was fleeting. Relsha was swiftly struck down, crushed under the monster's immense foot. Gravely wounded, she struggled to her knees, choking out a faint hope that her efforts had mattered, calling for her master, Stefan. As Relsha fell, Stefan, a young knight with striking blue hair and cloak, emerged clutching a blade aglow with mystical energy. Praised by the others as a hero and resolute knight, Stefan steeled himself for battle, aware that this very spot had been the downfall of the famed Sir Claude. But the monster unleashed chaos anew. A surge of fiery energy erupted from its frame, blasting the knights aside. Bathed in seething flames and a dark aura, the beast's form twisted and bulged, more monstrous than ever. Seizing command, Stefan exhorted the remaining knights not to yield, urging them to remember the vows they had made. He demanded that they prove worthy of House Altion's name. Fueled by anger and determination, Stefan readied himself. Sweat beaded his brow as he forced his trembling body into motion. Roaring defiance, he leapt with shining sword in hand, golden aura swirling around him like a storm. Channeling every ounce of house pride, Stefan launched a decisive thrust, striking at the monster with blazing energy. For a fleeting instant, it seemed he might break through. But there was a sudden, shocking reversal. Stefan's eyes widened in shock as he was unceremoniously hurled aside, crashing to the rubble with his sword and body limp, joining the ranks of the fallen. Amidst the devastation, Father Ceylon's colossal mace of light descended once more, aimed squarely at the monstrous foe. The spell landed with dazzling brilliance, but even this display of raw divine power failed to finish the creature. The monster, though injured, resisted and let loose a guttural growl, an unearthly resilience still burning in its eyes. Horrified, Ceylon realized that his mightiest magic had failed. Fear crept in as the monster, driven to frenzy, launched itself forward. Ceylon could only watch helplessly as the beast bore down upon him, until in the next instant he was engulfed in a blast of fire and darkness, his last remaining strength flickering in his outstretched hand. Then, through the settling dust and carnage, a new figure emerged. A powerfully built man with spiky crimson hair and bandaged arms stood tall, encased in a radiant golden aura. This was Leppenhardt, now incarnated in Tesron's formidable body. With a single, devastating punch, Leppen shattered the earth beneath him, annihilating the monster in one effortless blow as Father Ceylon watched in stunned disbelief. For a moment, even Leppen seemed startled by his own strength as he witnessed the creature's body dissolve away into nothing but wispy darkness. Leppen quickly understood why, in his former life, Tesron had been able to defeat him so easily. The recollection brought a brief smile to his lips as he realized the magnitude of this new body's power. Moved by responsibility, he glanced down at the battlefield littered with fallen knights, Stefan, Relsha, and the spent Ceylon. Knowing he could not leave them vulnerable, Leppen prepared to move them away from danger. But their respite was brief. A fresh threat soon appeared. From a shadowy staircase, skeletal warriors and monstrous abominations surged forth, led by a towering figure with a horned skull. Wizard Ted and Father Ceylon, both battered and wary, watched the arrival of these foes with disbelief and fear, wondering who this miraculous protector truly was. Leppen, standing unwaveringly before Relsh's unconscious form, raised his golden fist and met the approaching onslaught with fearless resolve. He warned the gathering horde to stay out his way as Wizard Ted and Father Ceylon looked on, uncertain but newly hopeful in the face of his incredible strength.
When I